And
Okay.
you're going to offer prayer tonight.
Okay, sounds good. We are live right now. And I'm going to go ahead and admit all the students now. Okay, there you go.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is our final installment in Ecclesiastes. And as you're coming online, and Scott will take a few minutes and set up some of the technological stuff, and people will kind of click on as it works for them. So let's suppose we have somebody actually with us now in the room, because we're doing this live streaming. And tonight we'll be covering Ecclesiastes 10, 11, and 12. And so like we do each week, to allow Scott to do some of the technological stuff, we ask some questions. I got a handful of them. And if I run out of questions, we'll take questions from the audience and have Scott answer them. So here's question number one. Old Testament. Jeremiah was going to be called to be a prophet. What excuse did he use to decline his prophetic call, or at least that he tried to use? What excuse did Jeremiah say, nah, I'm not the guy for the job? And that'll be in Jeremiah 1, 6, and 7. Got to have an answer to that. You're not going to get to 200 points. All right, there you go. Too young. Moses was the one that said, my tongue isn't very good. So Holly, you're down, you're in the hole, 40 points already. Okay, question number two. The Bible talks about the Battle of Armageddon, Revelation 16, Revelation 20. Where actually is Armageddon located? Is it a real? Yeah, there you go. Good for you, Colton Boz. Down at the base of Mount Carmel is this small, or was a small town, Megiddo. And this is large, fertile, triangular piece of geography. Massive battles were fought through the years. All right, next question. What problem, now, Holly, we're going to see if you can redeem yourself here. What problem did Isaiah see in himself when he was going to be called to be a prophet? What problem did Isaiah see in himself? He said, woe unto me. There you go. Jordan, you got to 40 points. It was going to go to Holly, that I am a man of unclean lips in a nation of people with unclean lips. The value of thinking about that. We see ourselves, oh, I'm just kind of bumping through, doing the best I can. I'm not very good in this or that. And maybe, I don't know why, I can hardly get out of my own tracks. Everybody was that way. God calls you to be about his business. All right. Here's just a real handy home and family one. What Old Testament queen massacred her own grandchildren? 2 Kings 11. So, you know, over the bridge and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. Athaliah, Holiday, you got your 40 points back. You're even, but good for you. Jeroboam ordered 2 golden calves to be set up. What cities in Palestine were the places where the golden calves were set up? Dan is one. And Beersheba, Holly, you just lost 20 points. Dan and Beersheba got married. So we can't yes, we're just having fun there. Jordan, Bethel, Dan and Bethel were the places. Now, here's something interesting. Gives the name and the age of Judah's youngest king at coronation. 2 Kings 22. Judah's youngest king ever. And Coach Boz, it was Josiah, and the age was 8. Good for you. All right, here's an interesting one. Jesus met blind Bartimaeus and the tax collector Zacchaeus in what city? Bartimaeus and Zacchaeus, they'll be in Mark 10 and Luke 19. In what city did he meet them? That'll be a 62-point question. Going once, going twice. Oh, random guess. Galilee, Bethlehem. You might as well make some more random guesses. Randomly guessed it right yet. New York, London, Brussels. Oh, nobody's going to get to 62 points. And it is Jericho, Glinda. Good for you. Okay, I got one more. And this has its own challenge. Give the geographic location when Jesus gave the Great Commission. You know, the Matthew 28 and so forth, go into all the world. Where specifically on top of a mountain, that's true, you get 2 points. Now what I know, now what I want to know is, where was that mountain? That's a challenge. See, I always put it in Jerusalem.
Galilee.
Mount of Olives, and Galilee is the actual place where it is. Good for you. Okay. Now what we're going to do is have some fun. Class, you get to think up the questions you would like to ask Scott Beyer, and we're going to see how smart he is.
This was not in the agreement.
Oh,
just
well,
so you know.
I just thought we'd run out of time and we'd need to have something to bridge that. So, class, do you have a woozy doozy question? You say, I'm going to see if we can stump Scott Beyer. And Jordan is, which days in creation had more than one major event of creation? Oh boy, that is great.
So what would that be? This you're going to have the birds of the air and the fish of the sea. Is that what you mean? Things like that, where it's okay, the birds and the fish were made. Is that what you mean by more than one major event of creation? Okay. You would have, let's see here.
Oh, holidays. How old was Joash? Holiday. You shouldn't ask that kind of question.
No, these are horrible questions. and this class turned itself on its head, and I don't like this sort of rebellion. No, with the creation, I'm trying to think. You would have, well, you had the sun and the moon and the stars all made. I don't know. Do those count as separate events? I'm not sure I quite understand what you mean by that. In terms of more than one major event, all of its major events, every single thing. Okay, 1 second, move on, I'll comment. Okay, Joash. Ooh, how old was Joash when he became king? I'm gonna say 10. I don't know. How many total chapters are in the Bible? I can tell you how many books there are. He was 7. He was 7. Okay. I have no idea how many total chapters are in the Bible. I could start adding it up in my head, but then we'd be sitting here watching me do arithmetic the whole time. 1,189 chapters. Okay. Yeah. See, the other thing is I can't Google it because you'd all see me get the shifty eyes of Googling. You'd all know that I was doing that because you'd have my video. Yeah, that's 0. That's 0 years, by the way. How many years until Holly can answer more questions than me? That's 0 years. She can already answer more questions than me. Vaughn can also answer more questions than me. I am no longer the smartest person in the household. But of course, that was okay because it ended the moment I got married. So, yeah. Yeah. Nathan told David he was the man, David Champagne. Day 3 has water and vegetation. Day 6 has animals and man. Okay, I get what you're getting at there. Last king in Samaria. Oh, I should know this one. I feel like it starts with a P. It was like, well, I could look it up, but that's kind of beside the point.
Scott, we had better move on from the
we better move on.
Ecclesiastes,
Yeah,
or we're
you
going to be here 2
started
days.
this sort of craziness. Somebody look up who was the last king, or if somebody knows it, they just put it in the chat. That way we can close that window in our mind. But we're going to move on to Ecclesiastes 10 through 12. Pekah, or P-E-K-A-H, I think is the way you spell that. So there we go. We're going to pray, take a moment to pray here, and then we're going to look into Ecclesiastes 10 through 12. So let's give God glory. Gracious and loving God, we thank you so very much for the chance to study, and that though we are separated by space, that the technology that we have allows us to look into your word together. What a wonderful blessing. Thank you that you have given us such a timeless word that we can know that there's nothing new under the sun. Thank you for the wisdom of Ecclesiastes. And as we open it and meditate upon it, we pray that you would be glorified and that we would be stronger for the time. We pray for all the saints, in particular during this time of the pandemic. And we pray for the nations that we're in, that their leadership would make wise decisions, and that in the end, man would dwell on and think upon you and return to you. Thank you, Father, for all that you have done. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So chapters 10, 11, and 12, we're going to finish up tonight. We'll do a little bit of review as well, just to kind of put the whole thing in context, and then talk a little bit about where we're going to go next. And so we've got a fair amount of material to cover in about 50 minutes or so here. So diving into chapter 10, it begins with this statement: dead flies make a perfumer's oil stink. So that's kind of just the understood. Yeah, we get that. You wouldn't want dead flies in your perfume. So a little foolishness is weightier than wisdom and honor. So this statement begins a discourse of I'd say about 7 or so verses that deal with foolishness and its impact. One of the things that is that Solomon seems to focus on here is that it doesn't take much foolishness to cause some major problems. Paul, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Having had the opportunity.
Sorry, I'm realizing I kind of made that like, you know what, Paul, that's your area of expertise. How about you dive right into a little foolishness ruining things?
Well, that works because if you've ever done some work overseas and in third world countries, that our sense of cleanliness and how restaurants ought to be, kick it out the window. You go into a bakery, I'm serious, you look into the display case, and here's the croissants and this and that, dead flies laying all over the place. One time, Glenn and I were in an Asian restaurant, and I forget what, they put down the plate or the food, and a little cockroach ran out. And the guy with us just went whack, smacked it on the table. Well, your appetite, I mean, it's just a little bug, but it doesn't take much for you to lose your appetite. Think about how presidents have been impeached, senators dishonored, celebrities and athletes fallen from their ivory towers. Reputation can take a lifetime to build and moments to ruin. He's calling us to be wise. And with that, let me take the 2 and 3 because they kind of go together. A wise man's heart directs him toward the right, that is the place of honor and protection. But the foolish man's heart directs him to the left, a place of inferiority, crummy choices. Why do they make those choices? One bad choice after another. Why? Because they're not using God's wisdom. And then verse 3 works with that, and turn it back over to Scott. Even a fool, when he walks along the road, his sense is lacking, and he demonstrates to everyone he's a fool. Everybody has seen this. You're out in public, here's somebody swearing loud mouth, or somebody in school or work bragging that they were drunk or immoral. Hey, yeah, let's get the car and gun the engine and get it out of control so we wreck it. Let's ride a motorcycle at 135 miles an hour between cars on a freeway. Isn't that fun? The New International Version says, He walks along the road, the fool lacks sense and shows everyone how stupid he is. So you look at people and say, woo, I'm glad that's not me. But if I wasn't a Christian, that would be me. Christians make good choices.
Yeah. And
Scott,
I think the next verse there kind of gives the contrast, which is, look, if you're standing before a ruler, here it says, if a ruler's temper rises against you, do not abandon your position, but because composure allays great offenses. It's kind of the opposite. You have the fool, and he's not thinking, and he just does crazy things, and everybody sees he's stupid. Well, if you're before a ruler and he flies off the handle, you don't do that too. You keep your composure, you be thoughtful, you be temperate in your behavior. And that's a good rule of thumb in life. When other people are going crazy, you don't join in. Don't continue to stir that pot. It's gonna make it worse. So the antidote, I would say, to foolishness is foolishness will continue to just grow if we feed it. And you see this with kind of, you mentioned you have bad drivers. One bad driver upsets everybody, so then the next guy cuts somebody else off, and it can just get to where it steamrolls. Here we do the opposite. No, I'll be the guy that it ends with. Other people can be foolish, but I'll be the guy that it stops with. So he continues there to talk about some of the evil that we see in the world, which is that folly sometimes sits in exalted places, while you have rich men who sit in humble places. And here I think probably rich men is dealing more with rich in wisdom. I don't know what your feelings are on that, Paul, but when you're looking at, we're over in Ecclesiastes, 10 down about, 6, 7, 8 right now. And we live in a world where sometimes you go, how did that guy get to that spot? I mean, what's going on? How is he there? And then there's much more qualified people that are not in that position. And that isn't evil. Really, in a perfect world, the most qualified people would be in the positions of authority and leadership. But it's not always the case. And so one of the things we have to do as Christians is learn, how do I deal with following somebody when their leadership's not ideal? And we see that in the workplace. You also see it in marriages. How many women in the history of the world have had to follow a man who was not a good leader?
And all these different principles in the world have names. And this one, I may not be attaching the right one. And so if you're familiar with it and actually got the right one, let me know. One that I think of that I'm attaching the name, the Peter principle, is a person rises to the level of his own incompetency. You get on up before, hey man, that guy's an idiot. I ain't going any higher. And so maybe that's true in government. Let's take a look at down in Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 8 and 9.
These are some of my favorite ones, by the way, this section.
Yeah. Well, I'll read it then and make you
oh, no, you go for it. But I just get excited about this section.
I typify this section as life has danger in anything you do. Just don't let it paralyze you. Be wise. Verse 8, he who digs a pit may fall into it, and a serpent might bite him who breaks through a wall. He who quarries stone may be hurt by them. He who splits logs may be endangered by them. Yeah, well, see, I got to, in order to be happy in life, I got to have it all figured out and all be perfect. It's not going to be that way. If you're digging a hole, a story for Glenda and her and her brother as little kids dug a hole, they're having a foxhole in the yard. Isn't that fun? Except their dad, who was a preacher, came home after dark, stepped in and broke his leg. Ooh, so hey,
oh man,
problems happen. And so in anything in life, there's nothing totally safe. Even laying on a sofa for a year, you're not going to get up better. Driving to grandma's house, working at Boeing, working at Amazon, everything has danger. You just put God first. Make good decisions, Christians. Go forth. Scott, what would you say on that?
Yeah. I guess what I like about this is the idea that we just have to accept that risk is inevitable. It's not like you can orchestrate a situation where you're never going to have any sort of danger. Under the sun, here on Earth, bad things happen and there are risks. And I'd much rather suffer for doing something right than suffer for doing something wrong. Because that's the Peter principle there. You know, when I say Peter principle, I mean Peter talked about that, suffering for doing what's right. And if we're paralyzed by fear, you're never going to get anything done. And you're also never going to get anything done if you are waiting for the perfect moment. You know, I'll do it once I know I can do it perfectly. Nothing's ever successful that way. You're going to learn an instrument. Okay, I'll learn how to play an instrument once I know that I can play it beautifully and I'm never going to hit a wrong note. Good luck, right? So those two things, the risk and reward are tied together. The man who takes the risk gets the reward.
How about Leila's thing? Nobody'd ever have children.
Yeah, it's true. And it is also, I think that happens with people today where they've kind of been told, well, look, you know, wait till you have enough money in the bank and wait till this or that and wait for the perfect moment to have kids. Well, if you're waiting for that, that's not going to ever happen. Life doesn't work that way. So maybe that's something that people can put in the comments, some things that they've taken risks on that were worth it, but they did suffer for it. Yeah. They're glad in the long run, but it did come with
a cost.
Some endangerment, but it was worth it. Maybe that's something that people can throw in the comments there, so we can all benefit from the collective wisdom of the group.
How about verse 14? The fool multiplies his words. No one knows what will happen. I think about this. Have any of you ever been to a psychic, you know, a fortune teller, had your fortune read, tea leaves, palm, crystal ball, any of that? Christy, okay. Here's the thing. I came out of a mystical home. My mom literally had a crystal ball. I learned as a little kid, here's how you read tea leaves. And if it does this or that, that's the biggest bunch of baloney you ever knew. If it was true, all psychics would be trillionaires, because all you got to do is look in the crystal ball and you'll know here's the perfect time to get in and out of the stock market. No, they're charging you $20 to do something. And financial advisors are absolutely brilliant. Man, in fact, I'd like you all to sign up with me. I'm going to start my own financial firm. And here's my only piece of advice. Buy low, sell high. Well, what's wrong with that? Who knows when that is? You say, boy, look here. If you'd have been signed up with me, I could have saved you from the Great Depression, 2008, 2020. They don't know. It's everybody guesses. So if you've got to know the future for sure to be happy, there's one thing I know for sure. You're not going to be happy. It's all about trusting God. Scott?
Yeah, some of the things that people are putting here in the comments too about risks. Buying a house, you're never quite ready. Yeah. Moving your family from one state to another. That's a huge thing. Man, you're settled in one place and now you have this opportunity, but boy, what's the cost? Changing jobs. And as Leila pointed out, having children. I think getting married would fit in that category. A lot of those big milestones in life also are the most dangerous, right? They're the riskiest ones. But what would life be without that? So yeah, and so you have the fool who multiplies his words. He's always got the answer. And I mean, it's the old joke, even a broken watch is right twice a day. And so that's what happens. If you say enough stuff, eventually you'll be right once in a while, but that's no way to actually be wise. Yeah. Paul, let's cruise on down here just a little further and maybe get the last little bits out of chapter 10 before we move to chapter 11. I'll
tell you, a big one for me is 18.
Okay. Oh. Through indolence, the rafters sag, and through slackness, the house leaks.
All right, Christians, I want to show of hands. probably this doesn't affect anybody but me. Has anybody ever had the slightest little tendency toward procrastination? Is that anybody else's life?
It didn't take long. Yeah, the hands start going up really fast, right?
It's not for everybody, but for most of us, a lot of us, it is so difficult because there's fear. Oh boy, if I do that, what if I get it wrong? Or it's difficulty. Oh man, I don't want to do that. Or it's unpleasant. Or I do it, but it's got to be perfect. My term paper, my house, the artwork, or whatever you're doing, it's just got to be flawless. And I'm not sure it can be flawless yet. And until it is, I can't get myself to do it. It's a form of perfectionism. Absolutely, Mike and Marion.
Yeah.
Through indolence, the rafters sag. So think about the stuff that happens. I cannot tell you the number of times I thought, I'll fix that on that car, and because and then it's much worse because I thought, I'll get to it. Not exercising, I'll get around to it. Just today, I said, man, I don't want to do it, and I can go online and here is I do all this stuff. I don't want to do that at the Paul. Pay the price, just get on there. Or delaying the assignment for tests, paying credit card charges late, confronting difficult situations, house maintenance put off, delay investing, avoiding the dentist, the doctor. Great friend of mine died, younger man than me. I converted him years ago. Why? He didn't have any chest pains. Just, yeah, I'll just sit in the recliner. He didn't survive it. He was having a heart attack. I lost a great friend. People lost a dad, a wife lost her husband, because we men are stubborn. We put it off. Be wise. Scott?
Yeah. I think you also can see it in terms of things like, well, I mean, the example that's given there is a house, right? The rafters beginning to sag. The house was a great house. That's what I think of in terms of Christianity is you never get to hit autopilot as a Christian, do you? You don't get to go, okay, now I've learned this stuff. I've read my Bible cover to cover. I've kind of squared away my life. So now I'm good. No, because if you say I'm done, then you really will start to deteriorate. Christianity, your life, your marriage, you can't do that with your marriage. You say, look, I told her I loved her. We did it. Check. No. You got to, there's upkeep. Anything worth having, there's going to be upkeep. And so you don't get to just achieve and say, I've done it. Here we are. We've arrived. No, you don't arrive till you get to heaven in anything in life. So there's a lot of wisdom in that idea of watch out. You can have a perfect house, but you leave it without the maintenance. Maintenance is huge.
Gardens, kids, cars, churches, spiritual life. They're all the same. Marriages and love need maintenance to keep those home fires burning.
Yeah.
Scott, why don't you talk to us a little bit about verse 20?
Verse 20. So, okay, let's go down and read it. Furthermore, this is chapter 10, verse 20. Furthermore, in your bedchamber, do not curse a king, and in your sleeping rooms, do not curse a rich man, for a bird of the heavens will carry the sound, and the winged creature will make the matter known. The idea there is, hey, if you think you can keep something quiet, think again. It won't work. There's so many things that in life we think nobody will ever find out. Oh no, that they will. It'll come out. That's in fact, I've started to just kind of accept that as a reality, is that you will either improve things in life or it will eventually come out that you didn't. Your sins will follow after you. So here you curse the king and you go, the king will never know. Somehow a little birdie will make it to him. He'll hear what you said and it'll cause you trouble. You talk bad about your boss by the water cooler and you think he'll never find out. Yeah, he will. He'll find out.
You post unwise things on your Facebook. And oh, the boss says, well, look what we found out there.
Yeah.
Think about this. If you're thinking about sharing something with somebody else, there's only one way to make sure nobody else will ever know. Guess what it is? You don't say it.
I was gonna say the only thing I know to do is to don't say it at all. Yeah.
That's right. Here's a couple principles. If you're thinking about sharing something with somebody else, let's say about a third person, what helps is picture that third person about whom you would be speaking as standing there now in your group of three. Would you say it? Because if you tell A may tell B. Plan on it being repeated. If it's not, it's amazing. So here's a handy little working formula. They say, well, how do I know when I should say anything to anybody about anything? If the person you're going to be talking to is either part of the problem or part of the solution. If they're not, don't say it.
Yeah. And it's that concept. What we're really talking about is discretion. Yeah. Just because I think it doesn't mean I need to say it. We all have this little lever in our brain. Some of us, it's a little rusty lever. The lever doesn't get as much use as it should, but there is a lever in your brain between the thoughts that happen and your mouth that lets it out. and you should have some control and practice with that. It is, one of the people mentioned in the comments that God always hears, and that's an important point. And we have to remember that God is, he disciplines us as his children. So if he hears us gossiping, and we may have thought, oh, I've really manufactured this, so I'll never get in trouble for it. If you don't think God can re-engineer it so that you end up suffering consequences because he wants you to learn, you got another thing coming. He will discipline you as his child. If you got a gossip problem, he will make it so that you all of a sudden have to deal with the consequences of it, no matter how crafty you think you are. Jordan puts you sow what you sow what you reap, or you reap what you sow, and it's true. If you are that type of person, that's what you're going to have to deal with. Paul, do you have anything else there in chapter 10 before we move to chapter 11 that you would like to?
No, I'm ready to move on to 11.
Okay, chapter 11 starts with, cast your bread on the surface of the waters, for you will find it after many days. Divide your portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. These are, I would say these are good investing terms. If you are investing in money, this is what they tell you. They call it diversifying. But there, I think, is also a broader principle of just not taking your life and focusing it on one thing and one thing only. Paul, talk about that a little bit, about the benefits of diversifying your life, not just your financial portfolio.
Oh, great point. Let's take a look at least two of them. And there are various explanations the commentators use regarding this, but one I'd like us to think about first is not just financially diversifying, that's beneficial. Think about what you do with generosity. That is, if I take a loaf of bread and I throw it in, let's say the Puyallup River, whichever one happens to be the Skagit, wherever you're close to, what do you expect to happen to the bread? Man, it's gone. I don't expect to see it. What he says is, maybe you live, by Puget Sound, or maybe if you're in New York, you buy the Atlantic Ocean, you throw it out in the water, you don't expect to see it again. He said, you know what? Let's say if you take your money and you bless others with it, there's a tide, there's a tidal factor, and it's going to come back after many days. The same idea in verse 2, divide your portion to 7 or even to 8. That is completely wise and help this person and that person, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. And so Galatians 6:10, do good to all men. Luke 16:9 was the unrighteous steward that was blessing these other guys. And when his money was going to be running out, people are saying, you know, you were always good to me. In fact, let me make a comment. Glenn and I have been talking about, maybe some of you know, there's a brother in Christ, Guy Gibson, who, when we were young and we did a lot of the camp counseling, Florida College camp, even before Cascade Friends started up, and the Earnhardts were involved. Guy Gibson, spectacular guy. He married Carrie Earnhardt. I think he's back somewhere at Kentucky. He's contracted COVID-19. They moved him from someplace to Louisville to get him into intensive care. Has like 5 or 6 kids. I don't know if that strike a chord with Scott or not, but anybody's got that many kids, and his life hanging in the balance, and tons of bills racked up. And they've opened a GoFundMe account to try to help that family. That appeals to me. And so think about it. It could be that, or other Christians that you know, people that you could help. So there's one area. I can use money. Now let's talk about another area of you investing yourself. Here's people that could use encouragement, mentorship. You could take them under your wing, say, how you doing? Encourage them, ask them, what's your greatest talent? See if they're using it or they need a little encouragement to use it. And so you invest in your kids, you invest in the Christians round about you, and people that are just starting to learn the gospel. You're investing in something that has no end. It goes on for eternity. Scott?
And in the business world, they would talk about this idea of, I think they typically call it something called synergy, which is where things connect in ways you didn't expect and make a difference. And I think when you're talking about investing your time and energy, that happens. If you just say, I'm going to focus on my kids and my kids only, who cares about people outside of my family? Well, okay, that's one approach. But what if you, yes, put time into your kids, but then you also put in a time to be involved in the life of other Christians, and time to be involved and do good to your fellow man as a whole? Well, guess what your kids then see? Your kids now build relationships with other Christians. They see what it's like to live and interact with other people. So ironically, you giving less time to your kids actually is beneficial to them. And so it's this idea of things interact in ways you don't expect. We see that happen all the time, really, at funerals. You go to a funeral, and I can't tell you the amount of times I've gone to a funeral. I said, I had no idea that person knew this person who died. I didn't know that connection was there, but something they had done, they had invested their effort into people, and there have been connections that they had made over time. And so, you know, your life, that at the end of your life, you get to see a little bit of that coming back at the end. And then, as Ron put, circle of influence. It's a matter of more than putting it into one thing. So from there, let's continue down in chapter 11, verse 4. He who watches the wind will not sow, and he who looks at the clouds will not reap. There are doers and there are talkers, aren't there? There are the people who are always talking about what they're going to do, or they're making the plans. And then there's the people who actually get out there and do something. And boy, that happens all the time. There's all these people who say, man, I would do it like this. This would be the way to handle this. And if we all handled it this way, it'd be great. But they said, but yeah, you're not doing anything. I'm more interested in the guy who's actually out there doing it, and he's falling on his face and he's making mistakes, but he's actually making progress in that process. So the guy goes out and he's always looking at it and making plans, but never actually executing.
The doers and the dreamers.
The doers and the dreamers. Yeah, great way to put it. Christy put those who do, and those who don't talk. That's another great way to put it. James 1:22, not being merely hearers, but doers of the word, I think is what that verse is referencing there. And so, yeah. Paul, what do you think? Let's talk about verse 5. Just as you do not know the path of the wind and how bones are formed in the womb of the pregnant woman, so you do not know the activity of God who makes all things.
That's right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
That Paul, with your vast medical knowledge, you really understand all about the birthing and how the embryo, and are you kidding? I'm a preacher. And so I just know that happens and it's amazing. And here these little cells differentiate and it all works. The reality is I don't know that. And so if I'm just going to serve God, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trust him because he's the one that knows the end from the beginning. So he brings us to that attention in verse 6. So sow your seed in the morning and don't be idle in the evening, for you do not know whether morning or evening sowing will succeed, or whether both of them will be good. You can't know that. I want to tell you, is it a good time to invest? Absolutely, great time. What's going to happen in the market? I don't know. If you need the money in the next 30 days, don't invest. Buy your food, get the toilet paper, the SpaghettiOs or whatever you're going to do. But if you're younger and you have years for it to grow, the market's been hit. It may go lower, but it's going to go up. But you never know. You just love God, serve others, give it your very best, and rejoice every day because you don't know what God knows. Mm-hmm. You just know what you know.
And it emphasizes that need to trust too, that God has designed it so we need to trust him and just accept that you're not going to know everything. That we, for those of us who lean towards control freak, we got to let go of that a little bit, don't we? I can't control everything because I can't know everything. Let's see here.
How about 7 through 10? It's
those kind of lock together,
major conclusion.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to read that?
Okay, in verse 7, group one, you read along with me. Light is pleasant, and it's good for the eyes to see the sun. Indeed, if a man should live many years, let him rejoice in them all, and let him remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. Everything to come will be futility. So, man, in sunshine, do you like sunshine? Man, it's a sunny day. And you go out and you feel, the John Denver sunshine on my shoulder almost makes me cry. It's great. And life will always be like that, Christian, because if you're a Christian, no bad things ever happen. And what are you talking about, Paul? Well, that's fantasy, because great old friend of ours from years ago, Albert C., used to say, you got to take the good with the bad. There's going to be both in life. Scott, talk about this a little bit on the days of darkness. Talk about reversals in life.
Yeah, so dark days are those days where you don't see any hope. That's the way I define a dark day. A dark day is a day where I wake up in the morning and I think, nothing good's happening today. And you will have seasons of that where, how do we get out of this? Whatever it is that has happened has just totally imploded something in your life. And we're dealing with, I think, a dark day in that sense right now, especially for some people. Some people right now are going, look, this is kind of an extended vacation. I got my paycheck and I'm okay. And I get a little bit extra time at home. For some people, it's that way. Other people, they're going, how are we going to put food on the table? How am I going to provide for my family? What's going to happen to my business that I've spent the last 30 years building up? And now, just like that, just could be gone. A dark day is a day where you are blind because it's dark. You can't see. You don't know what's going to be like. And here it says they're going to not just be a few of those, they will be many. So you really have to just accept as part of life, that's going to be part of what you go through. I think of the 23rd Psalm when I think of the dark days, the valley of the shadow of death. Here it is. There's going to be seasons in your life where you're going through the valley and you have no idea how you're going to get out of this thing. How's this going to turn out? And that uncertainty is very unnerving, and it makes you just want to sit down and give up. And the answer is you can't do that, because there's going to be many of them, but it's also enjoy the sunny days, because not every day is going to be a sunny day.
Yeah, along that line, somebody wrote in, have dark day matches. Some people are doomsday preppers. Okay, we got to dig a hole in the backyard. It's, put in a bunker and a Quonset hut and pipe in air and have 3 years and guns and all this stuff. But the reality is that's probably extreme. But they talk about having 3 months' wages set aside. Think about can you survive 3 weeks on the food you have in your house? What if you could go a month? That is, make some reasonable preparation without going crazy about it.
Well, I'll tell you something that I've done, and I can't even take credit for it. Jenna was the one who started it. Years ago, I would get a particularly nice note from somebody and about a sermon that I'd given. And I mean, we're talking about sermons that were years ago, so they weren't even any good. People were just being kind. But she would file those away. And then I would go through some sort of problem and just struggles in the church. And you just wonder whether these Christians are going to hang in there, and am I giving them the right advice? And you just wring in your hands over how things are going to turn out. And she would pull those out and say, I want you to read this. It's not always this way.
Yeah.
And this is how people feel. And that has been, I've never called them emergency dark day matches, but that's what those have been. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. So I started to do that because I saw how effective it was. You just kind of file those things away. And Jenna sometimes will say, okay, hey, maybe you need to go read some of that.
Scott, I've got a folder that things from years ago, camp counselors and things people said, I thought, if you lose track of this, you're not going to remember it. And so some of those things I just hang on to. Let's take a look at another verse. We got people in the comments
saying the same thing. They've done the same thing. Yeah. So it's a good, I would have never thought of it, but man, those make a difference, don't they?
Yeah. Let's move down to verse 9 and 10. So we can wrap up and have a little bit of time for 12. In verse 9 and 10, rejoice, young man, during your childhood, and let your heart be pleasant during the days of your young manhood, and follow the impulses of your heart and the desires of your eyes. Yet know that God will bring you into judgment for all these things. That if you have goals that are good, go after them, go for them. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking about stuff and it's bad, don't do it, because we'll stand in judgment for everything that we do. Verse 10, so remove vexation from your heart and put away pain from your body, for childhood and the prime of life are fleeting. They're transitory. It's brevity. There was a time for you older people when you were strong and laughed a lot and had a zest for life. There was a time in your childhood and 20s when you learned to roller skate and ride bikes and swim. And as boys, you got your first black eye. You climbed trees and got sent to the principal's office. Got whacked in the olden days with a 3-foot board of education. You got your first job, first girlfriend, first kiss, teenage broken hearts. Learned to ride motorcycles, drive cars, hike, fish, hunt, or whatever it was. You talked for hours. There were bonfires, camping. You fell in love. You got married. You had children. And you did it all when you were young. It's great. It's amazing. But it's really short. So what God says to do, you make sure you enjoy it. because youth and the prime of life are fleeting. It just goes pow, like that.
It's
Enjoy
a
it.
gift. It's a gift you're given, and you're only given it for a short time. And I also think it speaks to, as people get older, let's not deny the younger people their youth. Don't expect them to grow up too fast. It's like you said, Paul, we definitely need to help set boundaries for healthy choices, right? But be a kid, grow up and enjoy the process. And it doesn't have to happen super fast. It's okay. There's been plenty of time for you to be an old curmudgeon. You don't have to start there. And so there's some great advice there.
Talk to us about chapter 12.
So chapter 12, and I think, Paul, probably the best way to do this that you and I kind of talked about is maybe just take one verse back and forth to kind of see this figurative description of aging. So the young man should rejoice. Chapter 12 is going to start by saying, because then the old age comes. And it uses this really beautiful figurative language to describe what begins to happen to the body as you age. So I'll just take a verse, and then maybe you take a verse, and we'll just kind of very quickly cover for the class what those things are. Verse 1, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, when you will say, I have no delight in them. Before the sun and the moon, sun and the light, the moon and the stars are darkened, and the clouds return after the rain. So you have this picture of when your eyes begin to go dim, the world is dimmed. Everything is just a little bit duller than what it was in that vibrant youth.
Yeah. In fact, out of that, the one that always strikes me, look at that phrase, the clouds return after the rain. We know what that's like in Washington. It's not like, I had this little problem and I'm all healthy again. No, what he's saying, serve God while you're young and healthy, not in a wheelchair with emphysema, hooked up to an oxygen bottle, take 190 pills a day, and you can't remember the last time you felt good. Look at verse 3. The watchmen of the house tremble. Here's old people in their hand kind of shaking along, and the mighty men stoop. Here's the legs. Oh, I got hip problems and knee problems, hard to stand straight. The grinding one stand idle because they're few. I held a gospel meeting in I think it was North Carolina one time, at the preacher's name, his old guy then, he didn't have any teeth. His name was Crawford Slagle. I say, Crawford, how do you preach? He said, I got false teeth, but I can't use them. They strangle me. Well, all your teeth fall out. And those who look out of the window grow dim. You got the magnifying glasses, I can't see very good. He said, that's just the process. And the younger people say, isn't that funny? They can't see. That's the way it is. Scott, verse 4.
The doors on the street are shut as the sound of the grinding mill is low, and one will arise at the sound of the bird, and all the daughters of song will sing softly. Everything, look, you can't get a good night's sleep. It just takes just the smallest little sound, and you wake up, and the daughters of song will sing softly. You probably notice this with older people. They have a lot more trouble keeping enough breath to sing, and during services and things like that, we sing. And I remember, Lowell used to be that way. He got to a point where he's like, I can't sing. I'm just going to sit here and listen. And so these stages of life where you become more of what we might call even a shut-in, right? You're not going to go out. You're not going out in the street. You're not going out to a party. You're gonna hang out. Verse 5 there, Paul.
Furthermore, men are afraid of a high place. Doctors say, orthopedic surgeons, their patients come from two classes, young men in sports and old men on ladders. So terrors on the road. You're vulnerable to attack. You're more dangerous when you drive. The almond tree blossoms. Your hair goes white. Lose all the pigmentation. The grasshopper drags himself along. 10-year-old, they jump up and they're running. You watch these kids bouncing around. You get old and, man, if I just had a little more coffee, I'd be just like I was 18. Are you kidding me? You drink 4 pots. You're not going to be 18 again. And the caperberry is ineffective. It just doesn't stimulate you. You don't have the same energy. It's just what it is. The body is preparing itself for something else. Scott?
This says, for man goes to his eternal home while mourners go about in the street. Remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed. The pitcher by the well is shattered and the wheel at the cistern is crushed. So you have, remember before your heart stops pumping. Remember before you stop breathing. Remember before that cord that connects your body to your spirit is severed. You know, James says that when your spirit leaves the body, that's when you're dead. That's when the body's dead. There's a moment where those two things are severed. Remember God before all of those things happen, because they will happen to all of us. Your heart has only so many beats in it. In fact, you could drive yourself nuts with that, thinking about whatever you feel your heartbeat, you know, maybe feel it in your neck or something, and feel your pulse and go, I'll never have that pulse back. That's the last time that one ever happens.
Wow.
The counter's going down right now. It's just the nature of it.
And then down in verse 13 and 14, the conclusion, when all has been heard, everything we've studied in this whole book, I want to know, Paul, how do I be happy? He said, let me summarize it up in one sentence. Fear God and keep his commandments, because this applies to every person. For God will bring every act to judgment and everything which is hidden, whether it's good or evil. Christians, serve God, love him, love one another, and see if you can enjoy some aspect of every day, because our counter is counting down. We've got so many breaths, so many heartbeats left, and it's less than it was yesterday and a lot less than it was 10 years ago. And so you want to be happy, serve God, keep his commandments. You're going to be blessed. Scott?
Yeah, you have that fear God and keep his commandments. And I can't remember which version it is, but it says this is the whole of man. And I love that particular phraseology of it, that this is what life's all about. And maybe this is a good point for us to transition into just maybe reviewing some of the major themes from Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes, I look at it as a book that is about, there's temporary things and there's eternal things. And the temporary things, just accept them as temporary. When they're bad, they're only temporarily bad. When they're good, they're only temporary good. So don't get too wrapped up in them, but enjoy the good when you got it. Great. When the bad stuff's happening, you go, okay, well, you know, I can learn something from this. But it won't be forever. But then there are things that are eternal. And eternal things, your relationship with God, being right with your maker, that stuff matters whether you're a young man, whether you're an old man, everything in between. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole of man. Paul, how would you, what would be some concluding thoughts here from you as we wrap up Ecclesiastes?
Think about where we started in chapter 1. Solomon is trying to figure out what's good to do in life. I'll just hit a handful of things. In 1:15, he said, what's crooked can't be straightened. I can only be happy if we get this crazy world and the politicians and the finance, and it's never going to be perfect. Just expect it. In 1:18, wisdom brings grief. Just because you're smart doesn't mean you're happy, but it's a whole lot better than being stupid. So keep on gaining wisdom. Possessions won't bring happiness. They bring dissatisfaction. Now they're wearing out, or somebody stole them, or they just didn't make me as happy. We're to seek balance in life, not being overly wise, overly righteous, and trying to ruin ourselves by trying to be flawless, because nobody is. You're going to be criticized. You're going to be replaced. That's just part of God's plan for that next generation to come along. Just accept that. And so 7 major conclusions. 124, tell yourself your labor is good. Talk to yourself in positive ways. 312, rejoice and do good in the life that you live. 322, be happy in your activities. 518, enjoy yourself in all your labor. 8:15, eat and drink and be merry. 9:9, Enjoy life with the woman you love all the days of this fleeting life that you have under the sun. And 11:8, live many years and rejoice in them all. He keeps telling us these major principles that we know ought to be true, we lose track of. So what do you tell yourself to have a positive mental attitude? Get back in the game. Don't wait to get started. Be resilient. Don't give up on yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Take charge and mean it. You got it in you. I like this one. Somebody said, tough is your middle name. Go after it, Christians. Scott?
Okay, so that wraps up Ecclesiastes. We want to take just a minute as we're closing down to very quickly tell people where we're going next. Starting next Wednesday, Paul and I are going to look at the kings. We're going to start and do a quick overview of David and Saul and Solomon and that united kingdom, but then move into looking at the northern kings and the southern kings of the divided nation. Now, our goal here is not to make this dry, but instead to look at them in terms of leadership, how God interacts with nations, and maybe give you a little bit of an idea of the connection to the minor prophets and the major prophets. And what does good biblical leadership look like? Because all of us are leaders in some capacity. So we're going to start doing that starting next Wednesday. We're going to begin to go through that, not with the goal of getting all the dates and all squared away, but really let's do some character studies of these kings and how did things work out for them and what was their reputation, what was their legacy and everything like that. What are some things we can learn from the good kings and the bad kings, and sometimes learn from the bad kings that did good things and the good kings that did bad things. So there's a lot there in terms of character study. So that's where we'll be going on Wednesdays starting next week. Just remind everybody, Paul has a class on Tuesdays. What time is that, Paul? Your Acts
7
class?
o'clock.
7 o'clock. So Tuesdays, he has an Acts class over Zoom. If you want to be a part of that, contact Paul, or if you don't know how to contact Paul, contact me and I'll get you in contact with him and you can be a part of that class. I have on Thursdays, the Born Again series. We're going to be talking to Steve Wilkes tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And then starting next week, Buck Barrett and I are going to be doing some conversion stories from the New Testament on Monday. So those are some of the things going on. Monroe Valley, we've got a live stream worship service, 10 a.m. Paul, is there any other sort of announcements or things that you would like people to know
I see
about?
something popping up. What I've done for my Acts class is I said, okay, we're going to basically do a chapter a week. And if you want to have the notes, I'll email them to you. One of the things I've also offered to people, I see Christy is asking, and I think it's about this class, and it just gave me an idea. She's asking, is there handout notes? And I thought, boy, a little extra work, but wouldn't that be good if we did kind of a little, maybe a Word doc? And all right, Christians, we're going to look at, and I'd be willing to put some labor into that. Here's what we're going to be looking at in Saul, David, and Solomon. And so you could do a little research on it. Here's 10 questions to get ready for the class. Because I offer that in my Acts class. You can just sit back and enjoy it and fill in your missing blanks. You can have me mail your my notes, and I have worksheets if people want to do that level. I tell our group, I don't want to be one of these internet sites that as soon as I get your email, I'm going to send you 48 million pieces of email that you never wanted and don't know how to stop it again. So if you're interested in that, probably the easiest thing is either Scott or me, email us and say, yes, we would like that. And in fact, what I did for this Ecclesiastes class, I just made Word doc notes and highlighted it. So as we go through, I said, hey, Paul, remember you want to talk on this or that? If you'd like a copy of that, you're certainly welcome. If you're interested in us making up some study notes so you can prep for the King's class. That'd be cool. Let Scott know.
Okay, great. Well, perfect. We will close out there. Thank you, everybody. And we will see you, Lord willing, next week.
God bless. Stay safe.